Hello and welcome to the Lewiston Tribune podcast. This is episode number 49. I'm Matt Bainey, managing editor of the Lewiston Tribune, and I'm joined by Eric Barker, our outdoor and environmental editor. Eric, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Matt. Yourself?
I'm good. You're probably worn out because we just got done getting this together, the Cast and Blast 2025 Hunting and Fishing Edition. You've been working on this for about a month. It's available here at the Tribune if you didn't get your copy of it. And we're going to chat about this section and some of the stories within. You pointed out in your intro column to it that this is the earliest we've put out one of these things. Maybe people aren't quite in that fall mood that getting ready to, fish for fall Chinook or go out hunting. But putting it together, did that put you in the mood at all for that stuff?
Yeah, I think so a little bit. And, it's I'm usually a pretty early riser, but I am influenced by the time the sun comes up. And I've been noticing I've been sleeping later and later. And, in the evening, I look out the window and shoot, it's not even that much after 8. And it's pretty dark out. So yeah. I notice those kinds of things. I wish I could say I would notice a crispness in the air in the morning. Kind of do sometimes, but as we're talking, I think we're looking at a heat dome building and about several days of triple-digit temperatures, so not quite there. That's kind of what really does it for me, I think, is that, you get up and walk the dog in the morning and it just feels like fall. The geese, I think, move around a little bit more. Even our local geese, they don't really migrate a whole lot, I don't think, but they just seem to be stirred up late August, early September.
Yeah.
And they're just flying around more, and that kind of gets me going. So I'm thinking about it a little bit. I know other people are way into it. Archery season is just about to kick off. If it hasn't already in some units, that's a really early hunt, and people are stoked for that. Fall Chinook season opened on Monday, so people are out there hammering in those things. And catch and release steelhead fishing has been open since July 1st. So I think the people that are really into it, they're out there doing it. And those of us that jump in a little later are starting to feel it a little bit.
Well, and we're waiting for that change in the weather and those sorts of things. But going through this, I really do think, as I was looking through, I was like, oh man, that, it kind of got me a little bit excited about some of this stuff. And I'm not that much of an outdoorsman. For you, when you were putting this together, did any sort of themes kind of come up, intentional or otherwise?
No overarching theme, I would say. Spent more time on fishing this year. Last year, fishing was included for the first time. You go back since, I think we've been doing this since about 10 years now or so. Yeah. And so it started as the hunting edition. But yeah, I talked about, walleye fishing and fall Chinook fishing, and that was fun. I definitely have an interest in fishing, and Ralph came in with some of his sort of essay type writing on fishing for cutthroat in the fall. So there was a strong sort of fishing theme to it.
I guess what...
anything strike you? Or?
Well, what you... Probably something that if someone had told you 6-7 years ago you'd be writing about, you'd say, really? We had several walleye stories in the
That's
paper.
Right.
Of course, a non-native fish, but they're here now. Talk a little bit about walleye fishing and eating.
Well, so yeah, I had the chance to go fishing with John Snazza. He's the tackle manager at North 40. I had previously met John while writing about walleye. And he kind of gave me the basics just in an interview last year. And I bumped into him while shopping recently and said, hey, would you ever want to go out fishing? We make a whole story out of it. And he said, sure. And so we did it. And it was great. I enjoyed his company. We went out in his boat. We went to fished on the Snake River below Lower Granite Dam at Boyer Park. one of his old haunts. He used to be kind of a professional pike minnow fisherman, and that was one of his hot spots. And he said, kind of when he started fishing for walleye in this area, he just decided to hit his pike minnow spots to see if they were there. So yeah, we trolled for them. Used an outfit called a bottom crawler, and so you just troll at a really slow speed, and it's not the most exciting form of fishing, but you kind of get like any kind of fishing, there's that anticipation. You really want to catch something, and we did well. We caught them, and we didn't well, you can't limit out because there is no limits on walleye. We can get into that, why that is. But caught enough to take home and eat and make a couple meals, and yeah, they were really, really good. They're known to be a really good eating fish, and that played out for me for sure.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about what you ended up doing with the walleye. What kind of dishes you made with those?
Well, my wife Sadie and I had a trip planned to see her mother, who lives over in Western Oregon. So took the meat over there, froze it, and took it over there. And then her mom, Colleen, made fish tacos one night. It was really good. She just didn't bread the meat or anything, just sauteed it up in oil with a little bit of seasoning, and then just all the fish taco fixings, and really, really good. And then the next night we had leftovers, so she made something called sushi bowls. So sushi rice, which if you don't know is a little bit more kind of sticky and clumpy than regular rice. So just rice in a bowl and some like toppings. One of them being walleye, salt, toasted sesame. I think we had some fermented vegetables and some pickled vegetables rather, and fermented red onions, and kind of a sriracha mayo sauce. And that was really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And can you describe what walleye tastes like? What's its characteristics?
So in the section, I interviewed wild fish and game cookbook author Hank Shaw, who is quite well known on the internet amongst people who like to cook wild game and forage for things like morel mushrooms and that sort of thing. So he shared his go-to walleye recipe, which is just a pan-fried in a batter recipe. Built buttermilk batter seasoned with whatever you want to season with it, and you dredge it in some flour and fry it up and eat it however you want. But yeah, it's really mild. It's white. I think what he says has a really good flake factor, or something. I might be getting the term wrong there, but it's very flaky.
Mm-hmm.
It's mild. People compare it to cod. People compare it to halibut. So just it doesn't give you a really strong fishy taste.
And yet, walleye here is considered kind of a pest fish by
yes, a
fish
scourge,
managers.
I would say.
A scourge, yes.
A threat. They're not native here, and they are predatory. And they are moving further and further up the Snake River system, and now to the point where they overlap with some of the same places that juvenile salmon and steelhead rear. And so we always kind of sort of worried about walleye in the Columbia system, lower Columbia system, and the lower Snake system, because they were there as juvenile salmon, steelhead outmigrate to the sea. So and a lot of things eat those fish, smallmouth bass, a number of birds, and now pike minnow, a native fish, and now walleye was added to it. So it's just more predation. But if they're just predating when they're flushing through the system, that's sort of a moment in time. It's not great, but it's not perpetual.
Mm-hmm.
But the more the fish move into places where salmon and steelhead are rearing before they out migrate, then the longer that they're facing predation for a much longer period of time. So anyway, the Idaho, Washington, Oregon, and the tribes of the Columbia Basin. Nobody really wants them here, so there's no bag limits on them, and there's no size limits on them. So you can just catch as many as you want. Now it's probably too late to, put the cows back in the barn, so to speak, the genie back in the bottle. I think they're here, but I think anglers can, take advantage of this really this fish with a really good table fare and catch as many as they can, and maybe at least help suppress the population of walleye a little bit.
And yet, if you were to go to the Midwest, walleye are prized, valued, not seen as a pest, right?
No, where they're a native fish, or where they're not a threat to other native species and have been introduced. Yeah, they're not known to be a super hard fighting fish, but because they are so good to eat, they are very prized, and people love to fish for them. So they're a beloved fish, especially in the Midwest, and definitely I think there's people here that already sort of advocate for them. I've heard of people being against throwing back the bigger females because they're, produce more eggs and produce more offspring. Now, I am of the belief, keep them all.
Yeah.
let's not have them here. I mean, to me, what makes the Pacific Northwest special is salmon and steelhead. I mean, that's at the center of native culture. When Europeans moved in here, they picked up on the value of salmon and steelhead really quickly, and caught them, canned them, and now people of not native, non-native just love fishing for them whenever they're around, and so I think that's really special, and I think we should we should value that over a non-native species like walleye, no matter how good they are to eat.
And talk a little bit more about that if you can. The value of salmon and steelhead, they're good eating, and then I guess well, why are other of course why did the tribe prize them so much, you think? Why did newcomers to the area prize? What is it about them that makes them so special?
Well, I mean, salmon are wonderful, of course, to eat.
Yeah.
And they add to they're a big part of the ecology of the region. Some of our rivers are somewhat sterile when it comes to nutrients, but these fish, and people think that's why these fish go to the ocean. They go because they can't make as good of a living, so they go to the ocean. They fatten up on ocean nutrients. They come back, they spawn, they die, and then all that nutrients feeds the streams. But anyway, yeah, the Nez Perce tribe and other tribes, I mean, it was a super important food source for them, so much so that they built, their culture and economy around salmon and steelhead. And, it's no secret that they're not doing great, that wild A and B run steelhead are listed as threatened. Wild fall Chinook are listed as threatened. Wild spring summer Chinook are listed as threatened, and sockeye salmon in the Stanley Basin are listed as endangered. And we've been trying to recover them for decades, and it's an ongoing effort with not a great deal of success.
Yeah,
I mean they remain definitely under threat.
Yeah. That's enough talk about walleye. They're non-natives. It was all very interesting, but yes, let's
catch
talk
as many as you can. And be a part of the solution.
And
eat more walleye.
Deep fat fry and have some fun with that.
Have a fish fry.
You also you did some fishing for Chinook and using a different method. Tell us about that if you can.
Well, yeah. So I haven't tried this method myself yet, but I talked to Kyle Jones of Jones Sport Fishing. They operate throughout different places of Idaho and Washington, but Kyle Jones and his family live in Deary. And a few years ago, and I can't tell you he was the first person to do it, but I think he was among the first to really push it, started hover fishing. So the main way people catch fall Chinook out in the confluence of the Snake and Clearwater rivers is to troll for them. And it's, either use downriggers or use really kind of heavy weights because they're down there at the bottom. And then you have a flasher that you're trolling, which is sort of a big shiny blade, not quite as big as a license plate, but fairly big. And that's an attractant to the fish. And then behind that, you have your plug or lure. And so it's a lot, and when you hook a fish, you're dragging all that stuff. And so he was looking for something similar. Hover fishing is just, you have a much smaller weight, 2 to 4 ounces. Off of that, you have your just a hook and eggs, salmon eggs, and that's about it. I mean, you drift with the current. You try to keep all that set up straight up and down, and then you wait for a bite, which in this form of fishing is really subtle. So you have to be on the ball, paying attention. And he told me his clients love it. That they love having the rod in their hands. A lot of times when you're trolling, your rod is in a rod holder, and you're kind of sitting there
right.
waiting to leap at the rod when you do get a hit. But this, I think people, the way Kyle described it, are just much more engaged. They're just there and they're just waiting for that bite. So I'm excited. I'm eager to try it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Let's switch to hunting a bit here. What's kind of the outlook at this point for elk and deer season in this region?
Well, we're published this year earlier than we ever have before. It is still August. So we don't have a lot of the reports yet in this kind of the seasonal reports we get about how individual herds in different places are doing. Idaho did put out something that said statewide, we had mild winters last year. Elk calf survival was pretty good. Mule deer survival was decent. And that's based on collaring some calves and monitoring how they do. Calves and fawns. We don't really do that for whitetail. They're a different critter and much harder to do that with. But all the indications were that things, there was no big winter kill, no big disease outbreaks or anything like that. And so things should be, on a statewide basis looking pretty good. And that was the word that Fish and Game put out. We published today on Thursday, printed yesterday. And of course, as happens sometimes in a news cycle, we get a report that there's an EHD breakout south of Lewiston in Unit 11. Episodic hemorrhagic disease, which is particularly bad for whitetail deer. It can kill thousands of them. It's sort of seasonal. It comes on in the late summer and can persist till you have a hard frost. But it can put a pretty big dent in local populations. So we don't know how widespread this outbreak is. They've tested one animal, has tested positive for it. A couple others have the symptoms of it in Unit 11, and they've seen animals that look like they probably have it in Units 8 and 8A. And, it's been a long, hot, dry summer, and those are the conditions in which this disease that's spread by no-see-ums, midges. It's the conditions that they kind of is good for them. So we'll have to wait and see. Hopefully it's not a bad outbreak like it was in, I think, 2021 and 2003, where upwards of 10,000 deer died in each of those outbreaks. And, whitetail can recover pretty quickly, a couple of years, but people, if your favorite hunting spot or wildlife viewing spot happens to get hit hard, you'll notice for sure.
You also wrote about a Soton teacher, Glenn Landris, who's a sheep hunter, wild sheep hunter, and has been doing it for about 30 years and has traveled the world going on hunts, gone to a few kind of interesting locations and become an advocate for wild sheep. Hunting wild sheep, from what you've gathered, what's the appeal of that? What's the challenge? Why does a guy like Glenn get into it?
Well, I asked Glenn that very question. So 30 years ago, he drew a wild sheep tag on the Grand Ronde River and had a successful hunt. And soon after, the first big outbreak of pneumonia hit wild sheep in Hell's Canyon. All age die off, really, really bad. And so that drew him into being involved in conservation and the Wild Sheep Foundation, both local chapter and national chapter. But I asked him, what is it about wild sheep that really kind of, once people hunt them, they want to hunt them more. And it's hard to hunt them more because there's not very many tags on them. They're managed very conservatively. And his answer didn't surprise me. What he said is, it's one thing. I mean, they're super cool animals. Like they're fun to look at. They're fun to watch, and they tend to live in really, really cool places like Hell's Canyon, or doll and stone sheep, like in the mountains of British Columbia and Alaska, Yukon Territory, places like that. So they're fun to watch. They live in gorgeous places, and it's hard to get to hunt them. So there's the challenge of even getting the opportunity to hunt them. And then, as he said, unlike deer and elk, they have their headgear, their horns, year round. They don't shed them, and so that kind of adds to the enjoyment of watching them.
And a trophy with that horn curl,
Full curl,
that I can imagine that's just something that's prized among a sheep hunter to get that on their wall.
Absolutely. And it's what he told me is wild sheep hunting is becoming really, really expensive. Like a ton of people got into it as they did other outdoor endeavors at the time of COVID. When it was outside, it was something you could do.
Yeah.
And two, people were probably thinking, well, this is, stuff can go wrong. Maybe if I have some stuff I want to accomplish, I should get after it. And anyway, the expense of that sort of drove him to ibex hunting internationally. Not quite as expensive, but also really cool, interesting animals that live in really cool places. And the story in this section is about him, not only about his involvement in sheep conservation and how he got into it, but a hunt he did in Pakistan, a successful hunt he had in Pakistan. So people should check that out for sure.
I thought he had some good advice in there, not just for hunting internationally, but just traveling internationally.
Yeah.
He said, be sure to bring a friend with you who speaks your language. And I thought, yes, that would... it'd be awfully lonely to be somewhere and no one can communicate with you.
Yeah, I thought that was a great point. And his other piece of advice, if you're going to less developed places, try to arrange the trip as best you can with outfits that have good reputations, have been doing it a long time, and can set you up for success.
You never know what you could end up in if
right
if you don't know how to communicate. We also, you mentioned Ralph Barthold, former Tribune reporter and a good friend of ours. And Ralph, he writes as pretty as his name is questionable. Anyway, a couple good pieces. I always look forward to you getting some Ralph pieces in the section. And, Ralph, let me just read one passage from one of his stories. He wrote about October fly fishing, and this one struck me among many. He writes, this is a solitary season. Not even the engine brake of a logging truck cuts the quiet. Just gray, overcast with infrequent flashes of autumn sunlight blinking on the moving water and disappearing. Anyway, just a real vivid image. Ralph's, I always enjoy Ralph's columns. I enjoy the stuff you write. One that comes to mind recently when you went out for a hunt and you forgot your gun and you met somebody and they loaned you one. And there's something about in our business, in the newspaper business, it's mostly you don't write flowery generally. You know, it's the who, what, when, where, why.
To the point.
That's right. Yeah. And yet, when it comes to outdoor writing at all levels, including the newspaper level, there's sort of a flair about it that you encounter quite a bit, and it's. I think even for folks who uh, aren't outdoor people, I think there's some enjoyment in reading things
Yeah.
like what Ralph writes, what you write. Why is that? Why is it that outdoor writing just sort of naturally ends up with kind of a flair about it?
I think we got to relate it back to our last conversation. Is the places that you do outdoor stuff are? I mean, they tend to be, beautiful. Rivers, mountains, deserts, and when you're setting the scene as a writer, it just naturally lends itself to being creative and in describing the place and or the pursuit too, whether it's a fish or deer or an elk or what have you. Describing the mood, describing the scene just lends itself to creative writing. And then too, there's just a real tradition
Hmm.
of that in outdoor writing. Here in Lewiston, the home of Jack O'Connor for many years, the dean of outdoor writers. He was the gun editor for Outdoor Life magazine, and there's the Jack O'Connor Hunting Heritage Education Center here in Lewiston. But yeah, he was a wonderful writer, and many others have graced the pages of the outdoor journals of the past. Outdoor Life, Field and Stream, and just a whole host of them. Gray Sporting Journal, all of them kind of featured just kind of really quality, creative writing centered around fishing, hunting, and that sort of thing. So I think it comes from both of those things.
And you forgot to mention one publication too, Cast and Blast
Cast and Blast
2025.
24, the Lewiston Tribune.
That's right. Be sure to check it out. So the section, yes, it's full of wonderful writing and interesting features about folks. Probably a kind of a nice break from you that you're not necessarily your other part of your job besides writing about hunting and fishing is resources, and
Yeah,
a lot of times that's uh, got political
sure.
aspects to it. Um, I there's probably part of you that I don't know is enjoy the right word for that piece of your job, or at least there's some interest in it. It's intriguing. Uh, is it nice though to get a break and mostly write about hunting and fishing in this section?
Yeah, it's nice to have sort of a yin and yang, for lack of a better uh, phrase to compare them. But yeah, to get into the fun stuff, the recreation pursuit. Now there can be controversy in politics on both sides, and I enjoy both sides. I mean, I'm kind of a hard news hound, so I do like the uh, the environmental side of it, the stuff that tends to be in the daily paper. But yeah, just talking about the things that people love to do, the reasons they live in this part of Idaho and this part of Washington, whether it's to hunt, to fish, to hike, to camp, to raft, to jet boat. I mean, it's all people just love the places and they love the things that they can do in the outdoors, and so that is enjoyable to not only write about them, but to kind of to meet the characters, the people that are into that lifestyle that
Hmm.
that attracts so many of us, and it makes this a destination for a lot of visitors all over the country and all over the world too.
Yeah. You did have in the section there is kind of one story that is a bit more
Hmm.
on the political side, and it's about the notion of public lands
Yeah,
potentially being sold off, and it was kind of kind of a look ahead, really. So, uh, really, a coalition of a lot of people who are interested in public lands kind of helped fight off a proposal in Congress to sell off some public
that's right.
lands. Now they're looking forward. I guess kind of tell us about what their outlook is on this issue going forward.
Well, so yeah, they want to be proactive instead of reactive, and so they want to look for ways to kind of weaken the argument of those who would sell off public lands and privatize them. Um, so they're looking at things. How can we do more to reduce wildfire? To the extent there is a housing shortage, is there a legitimate, measured way where public land might be able to offer some relief? Now, this last, in the budget reconciliation bill, Senator Mike Lee of Utah wanted to stick in a provision that would have sold off like 3 million acres of public lands with not a lot of sideboards on it. Some, but they're pretty loose.
Mm-hmm.
And so these public advocates are saying, if there's a specific piece of land with a specific housing proposal and it goes through a legitimate public process, then sure, that's fine. We can talk about that. We can measure the merits of it, and we're willing to do that. But also, going back to the fire issue, if there's a way that we can take some of the reduce the occurrence of large damaging fires, and that'll sort of reduce the heat on this issue, we'd like to do that. Now that becomes difficult, I will say, because what was so interesting about the movement to turn back Mike Lee's amendment, his push to sell off public lands, was it was a very big tent coalition. Hunters and anglers, absolutely right there in the middle of it. But there's, bird watchers and hikers and just conservationists and people who love the outdoors of all sorts joined forces and, contacted their members of Congress and basically told them hell no. As you start getting into, okay, well, maybe we should manage forests this way, and that will take the pressure off. You're probably going to start splintering these groups off and not having that agreement. So it's and they realize that. They realize it's going to be difficult, but they want to do what they can to kind of take the wind out of the argument that public land should be sold off. And also, they want to remind politicians of just how strong this sort of grassroots movement was. I mean, they did some polling in Idaho, and something like 98% of the people they polled, I might not have that number exactly right, high 90s, was in support of keeping public lands public. And they also did some polling that showed that, when Senator Jim Risch, who was up for re-election next year, came out against Mike Lee's amendment, that his approval rating jumped some 10 points, which is, so they want to remind politicians of that. And, this was a federal level, but our legislators in the state heard from constituents about it. So yeah, that's part of it. They want to make sure that politicians don't forget how strong that reaction is and how supportive the public is of having places to hike, to camp, to hunt, and to fish, and on and on and on.
Well, and as you mentioned, I mean, the folks who joined the push against that, probably from all over the political spectrum.
Absolutely.
And, that's a pretty rare thing these days for people from a wide swath of political standpoints join together against something. So it's even more noticeable these days, I'd think.
I absolutely, I think you're right.
Right. Well, Eric, thank you. That was a lot of fun to chat about the section. Be sure to check it out. It was in Thursday's Tribune. It's also for sale down at the Tribune office. It's on our website as well. You can look at it there. And thank you for joining us for this episode of the Lewiston Tribune podcast. We'll be back again next week with another new episode. And until then, have a great day.